Happy almost June from the Adrianson family basement, and the coolness of this basement environment is quite a marked contrast to what I experienced in Kenya and to some degree in Ethiopia. But more about that in a moment. First, I want to thank you for your patience. If you've tuned in the past to our website to find out a prayer update or a ministry trip report from one of our prior foreign soil trips, you know we try to get that online within a week and a half. Well, today is day 11 after I've returned. However, many of you started praying for this trip back in mid-April, which means we're coming up on a month and a half. And many of you have been praying for me, my health, my safety, the ministry opportunities there for close to 90 days. And I appreciate that. And thank you for your patience in waiting until this moment to hear more about how God answered your prayers. Which leaves me with a very unenviable task of trying to summarize just some of the ways that I saw God respond to you as you were praying. And I'm going to invite you, like I always do, to get in touch with me individually, either in person, email, text. I would love to tell you specifically stories and conversations and events of just how I sense God working in response to your specific prayer. So please get in touch with me on that. But in the meantime, I do want to give you a brief overview of ways that God responded to your prayers during the entire trip. If we remember from the prayer guide, which I know at least some of you were using, because I was getting some on-time text messages and emails when they did get through, about the fact that you were praying for me on specific days for specific opportunities. But one of the things that many of you were praying about involved spiritual strength and physical stamina. And in addition to that, that I wouldn't be affected by the heat, that I'd be able to sleep, that no mosquito-borne illnesses would impact my trip. And I want to tell you, based upon a very full schedule, I did not, because of God's responses to your praying beside me, I did not have to cancel anything, nor did I miss anything. And even when I didn't get a really good night's sleep, or when I needed to take some antibiotics for a traveler's tummy, that's what I call it, for a traveler's tummy illness later during the trip, it did not affect any of the events I was facilitating, any of the conversations I was having, any of the teaching I was doing. So thank you so much for praying beside me in that way. I really cannot thank you enough. And there are other general ways I could tell you about more in person too. If you remember, there were 3 basic phases for the trip. The first phase was Kenya, and it was centered around a spiritual refreshment retreat for a small group of couples. And one of those couples gave me this gave me this mug that I'm going to take a sip from because I just all of a sudden got a tickle in my throat. They gave it expressing their gratitude to me and to you for making this spiritual refreshment retreat possible. Because as you know, behind the scenes, funds each of these trips so that there's no expenses for these Christian leaders to attend, which I'm so grateful for you to be doing that at our side. We had a lot of rich conversations. We had a lot of good reflection around John chapters 13 through 16, some good sidebar chats, just a refreshing time. And I know from the feedback that they gave me directly and that they gave others after the retreat was over, just how much it meant to them. So thank you for praying beside me that way. The second phase of the trip, the one that had me doing the least amount of teaching and facilitating, was in Ethiopia and was a five-day or so event that I came along as a bit of an unofficial chaplain. So I didn't do any presenting, but I did have a lot of conversations with folks over lunch, over dinner, between sessions. And these conversations were very behind the scenes-ish in that they were able to share with me, a person from the outside looking in, some deep things that they're feeling. Some of them are very excited about what's going on in their lives and ministries. Others of them are disheartened and discouraged, and everywhere in between those 2 points on the spectrum. So thank you for praying beside me during that time. The focus of the conference was on reaching the Somalis, the Somali culture for Christ. And if you know anything in the last few years, what's been going on over there, not only are they a nomadic culture that finds themselves living amongst different geographical nations in East Africa, but also there's a lot of government turbulence going on. And so there's particularly unique challenges for them. And so part of my encouragement was focused on the fact that this is very difficult ministry for these folks. So you can even pray that way as I have future conversations with them and the folks from Kenya and the other folks from Ethiopia that I met during phase 3. And phase 3 was on the other side of the capital city of Addis Ababa, which has the elevation of about 1.5 miles, which makes Denver seem a little bit low, doesn't it? But God even didn't allow the oxygen deprivation to affect this middle-aged man. So I appreciate you praying that way. The last phase of the trip was about 9 days or so, and it was definitely the most full part of my ministry schedule, and I did the most interacting and facilitating and teaching, and God really showed up. There were 2 spiritual refreshment retreats, 2 days each, as a part of those 9 days. There was some travel time. There was a half-day retreat for a local group of African Christian leaders. That was a very, very rich time. And then I had a couple opportunities to speak at churches and interact with church leaders. And that doesn't even mention the side conversations I had with all these people I met at these opportunities. So thank you so much for praying beside this time. I mean, it was very rich. These pastors that came in, and there were a lot more of them than would normally attend a spiritual refreshment retreat. These pastors that came in usually came from villages or from a church planting situation. So they were really thirsty for fellowship, to have a group of people they can worship with, not to mention to reflect on how Christ wants to draw closer to them in his personal relationship with each of them individually, which is what we focused on during these spiritual refreshment retreats. It was really powerful. It was very dynamic. And I received a lot of thank yous from them, letting you know how much it deeply impacted them that there are these people back in the States who were praying for them, even though they never met them, and was making it possible for me to be there and encourage them. So thank you so much for that. As I've expressed in the past, you are more than only a partner in the behind-the-scenes ministry, and I know I speak on behalf of the whole board. You're more than a partner. You are that, but through your encouragement, your prayer, even those of you who are able to give, you're a part of this ministry. When I was there on the ground in East Africa, seeing prayer after prayer being answered, heart after heart being softened, spirit after spirit being encouraged, I just kept thinking, I wish all those praying for me could be here, because they're participating every bit as much here as I am. Even though they're not bodily present, their participation is as full as mine. Thank you for that. And I mean that, and I know the board expresses that same gratitude from the bottom of our hearts. And just to thank you for coming this far with the video, if you've made it all the way through, I'm going to give you a special potential bonus giveaway. If you know what this t-shirt is referring to, then all you need to do is send me a quick email and be the first to do so, and I'll get into your hands as soon as I can a bag of whole bean Ethiopian coffee. Remember, Ethiopia is the epicenter of coffee on the planet, and they're very delighted to be. So thank you so much again for praying, and thank you for your encouragement, and thank you for those of you who were able to give to make this trip possible.